Howdy, welcome back to Dion Talk. A massive flaw in the affordability index. And someday, I may use the affordability index again. But not today. There are times, historically, when using the affordability index was a great way to know when to invest and when to pivot. Michael Zuber, for example, who reached financial freedom, one rental at a time, has used the affordability index to know, like in 2008, when the average person would struggle to buy the average house, that it was a good time to sell, which he did. He sold a lot of his single-family houses and moved into multifamily just before the crash. So it's not that he predicted it. The Housing Affordability Index let him know that it was a good time to sell. It's important to watch your market and what's going on a national level to know sometimes if you need to pivot markets or asset classes. An example is I tried to invest in real estate in my area, and my goal was to buy a single-family house, live there for a year, buy another single-family house, live there for a year, rinse and repeat until I had about 10. But in my area, single-family houses don't cash flow. They don't have a good cash-on-cash return because you would lose money every month. So I pivoted into small multifamily. I've never used the affordability index to determine what to do with real estate, but I understand some smart investors who have more experience and knowledge and success than me do use it. Matt the Lumberjack Landlord, Michael Zuber, they both use the affordability index. And Matt the Lumberjack Landlord actually explained in a really good interview recently how each state might calculate the numbers different in their affordability index. But here's the flaw. Here's the reason why I would like you to, if you use the affordability index, think of it as one metric out of several that you might use to determine what you're going to do. The affordability index takes the income in the area and the home prices in the area, and it tells you, can the average person buy the average house in that area based on median income and median home price? Historically, this has been great. It's given you a clear image of whether houses are expensive or inexpensive in an area, because prices set what people can pay, and home buyers, who are the biggest competition of investors in buy and hold rentals, buy on payment. So their wage is a big factor. Here's the flaw. Here's the reason why I don't think you should use it as the thing to hang your hat on. Just have it as one arrow in your quiver of several arrows that you use to determine what to do in your local market. In 2020, for the first time in my life, we had a pandemic, well, on a large enough scale to literally shut down the economy. And this created the opportunity for companies to, instead of just closing down, sending people home to work from home. So for the first time on this big a scale in my life, working at a distance or remote working is more an option than ever. So you had people in cities who could move to rural areas where in the city they were paying through $3,500 or $4,000 a month for a crappy little apartment. They could move to a rural area and buy a house where the mortgage payment was $2,000 and be living in a much better situation and work remotely. Homeschooling was more of an option. A lot of these people couldn't buy a house because they weren't sure that they were going to be working remotely forever. There are places like Pinterest who paid $89 million to break their lease in San Francisco and then paid $20,000 to employees to relocate and pretty much planning on keeping people working remotely. There's a lot of state and city and municipality, county jobs where people can work remotely and seem to be staying that way. But there are companies like Tesla where Elon actually said, return to the office or I'm going to fire you, or something like that. For the first year, they were renters, which greatly increased rental demand outside of cities. Rents in my area pretty much doubled within 2 years. That doesn't suck for the property owner, and it doesn't suck for the people who are moving from the city areas to the rural areas because they're paying less. It sucked for the people who lived in the rural areas who now can't afford to rent there. That is definitely a challenge, but it's been over a year now. And there's companies that are reaching kind of an equilibrium on who's going to be able to work from home on a permanent basis. So more people are able to buy outside of the cities because they know they can work remotely. But wages are a lagging indicator. We don't really have a clear indicator of what people were making in an area until next year when they file their taxes. And depending on when they moved in the year, they might file their taxes based on their city location, especially if they were living in an area where there's no income tax and then they move to an area where there is. They might time it so that they don't have to pay that state income tax because it wasn't their state of residence the entire year. But they're paying that much more in rent, and they're paying that much more for properties. So the affordability index is using current home prices, but last year's wages, when we are seeing record wage inflation, not just from people being able to move in an area and work remotely, but we're seeing the great resignation. Over 4 million people a month have been quitting their jobs, and unemployment is the lowest it's been in decades. I mean, it's under 4%, which means people aren't quitting their jobs and then just going and not working. They're changing companies, which means they're not getting the average of 5 to 7% of a wage increase that we're seeing when people track the data. They're getting a 10 to 20% wage increase when they go from one company to another and then work remotely, which really skews the numbers for the affordability index. So over a long period of time, when wages aren't radically changing and the type of work going from having to work in an office or a cubicle to being able to work in your home office aren't changing on such a drastic scale, sure, affordability index is a great metric to use.
But not today.
And someday, I might work remotely. I think this is a good location to work remotely. I am in Washington, hoping that I don't drop my phone again. And I hope this information has helped you at least think. And like I said, I'm not saying completely dismiss the affordability index. I am saying just use it as one metric out of many that you choose to make decisions in your investing. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.
The number you have dialed is not in service at this time.